The wall in the laundry room the day the police broke through the wall in our basement. Almost everyone there got sick. Everyone except Daniel. He was the building handyman, the kind of quiet, dependable man everyone trusted. That afternoon, he stood at the back of the crowd in his old blue maintenance jacket, watching the officers tear through the bricks that had sealed the wall for 12 years. When they finally found what was hidden inside, Daniel smiled. It was not happiness. It was not shock. It was relief. Then he lowered his head and whispered, "Thank God. She doesn't have to knock anymore." At the time, everyone thought Daniel had lost his mind, but I knew he hadn't, before the police ever came. I had heard the knocking too, and I knew exactly where it was coming from. Inside that wall, I moved into Maple Grove Apartments in early November. It was an old brick building outside Portland, Oregon, the kind of place that looked charming online but felt damp and tired once you were actually living there. The hallway carpet smelled like mildew. The elevator sometimes stopped between floors. At night, the heating pipes banged so loudly it sounded like something was being dragged through the walls. But the rent was cheap, so I ignored all of it. The only place I truly hated was the basement laundry room. 4 washing machines stood against a concrete wall. 3 worked. The third had been broken for years with a faded out-of-order sign taped across the lid. Nobody used it. Nobody repaired it. It just sat there. At first, the machine itself did not bother me. The wall behind it did. The third machine stuck out farther than the others, leaving a narrow gap behind it. The concrete there looked thicker, rougher, and newer than the rest of the basement, as if that section had been rebuilt later. I assumed there were old pipes behind it. That was the reasonable explanation. At least, that was what I told myself. The first strange thing happened about 3 weeks after I moved in. It was just after 11 at night, and I was doing laundry with only one other person in the basement, Mrs. Harris from the second floor. She was an elderly woman who rarely spoke. Most tenants thought she was unfriendly, but I always felt like she was just tired. That night, she stopped beside the third washing machine and stared at it for several seconds. Then she warned me not to stand there at night, especially if I heard something. I thought she was joking, but she did not smile. She simply pushed her laundry cart out of the room and left me alone with the hum of the dryers. For a few seconds, I stood there feeling foolish. Old buildings make noises. Pipes knock. Floors settle. That was all. Then something hit the wall behind the third washing machine. Thump. I froze. It was not the pipes. It was not the machine. It sounded like someone tapping the concrete from the other side. A few seconds later, it happened again. Thump. Slower this time, almost patient. Almost like whoever was making the sound was waiting for an answer. I took one step toward the machine. That was when Daniel's voice came from behind me. "Don't answer it." I turned around and saw him standing at the entrance. Daniel was probably in his 40s with tired eyes and a faded blue work jacket he wore almost every day. Everyone liked him. He fixed locks, repaired leaks, carried boxes for elderly tenants, and never made anyone feel like a bother. But that night, when he looked at the wall, he did not look helpful. He looked afraid. I asked him what was behind the broken machine. He told me it was old plumbing. When I asked if old plumbing knocked, he did not answer. He walked over, opened a small maintenance panel on the machine, and tightened a screw that did not even look loose. Then he told me the sound would stop. Before leaving, he gave me one more warning. "If you hear it again, don't answer." For the next few days, nothing happened. No knocking, no strange sounds. I started thinking I had imagined it. Then one night around 1 in the morning, I saw Daniel walking down the hallway. He was not carrying his toolbox. He was carrying a folding chair. I followed him downstairs and stayed hidden on the stairwell. Daniel entered the laundry room, placed the chair directly in front of the third washing machine, and sat down facing the wall. He did not use his phone. He did not read. He did not move. He just listened. 40 minutes passed. Then the wall knocked. Thump. Daniel did not react. Another knock came. Thump. He took a small notebook from his pocket, wrote something down, and stayed there until 19:40 a.m. The next night he came back. Then the night after that, it was the same chair, the same place, and the same wall. That was when I realized Daniel was not fixing anything. He was counting. The next day, I asked the building manager how long the third washing machine had been broken. After checking old records, He told me it had been out of service for 12 years. Daniel had claimed there was a drainage problem behind it and warned that moving the machine could damage the wall. When I asked whether that section of wall had ever been repaired, the manager checked again. It had, 12 years earlier, and the repair had been handled by Daniel. That night, I searched the building's address online. After digging through old local news reports, I found a story from 12 years earlier. A woman named Sarah Miller had disappeared from Maple Grove Apartments. She was 27, lived alone, and was last seen entering the basement laundry room with a basket of clothes. She never came back out. Police searched the building and questioned everyone, but they found nothing. No body, no evidence, no suspect. The case went cold. Then I saw the detail that made my hands go cold. The day after Sarah disappeared, the basement had been closed for emergency repairs. The person who handled those repairs was Daniel. The next night, I followed him again. After he left the laundry room, I went inside and found a folded piece of paper on the floor near the third washing machine. It must have fallen from his notebook. The page was filled with dates and numbers. The 2nd of November, 7 knocks. The 3rd of November, 6 knocks. The 4th of November, 6 knocks. The records went back years. The older entries had dozens of knocks. The newer ones had only a few at the top of the page. Daniel had written one sentence she still remembers. Before I could put the paper back, the wall knocked. Thump. I froze. Another knock followed. Thump. Then a third. That was when I noticed the spaces between the knocks were different. Short, short. Long, then long. Short. It was not random. It was a pattern. I recorded it on my phone and showed it to someone who knew Morse code. After listening several times, he told me part of the recording was missing, but one word came through clearly open. That was when I called the police. At first, they did not believe me. To them, it sounded like another nervous tenant in an old building complaining about strange noises. But when I mentioned Sarah Miller, everything changed. Detectives reopened the old records and checked the maintenance reports from the week Sarah disappeared. They found something that had been overlooked for 12 years. Daniel had bought the materials himself, 200 bricks, 6 bags of concrete and soundproofing insulation. Everything had been listed as emergency plumbing repairs. But the original building plans showed no major pipes behind the third washing machine. There was no reason for that wall to exist. The police got a search warrant. 3 days later, they came to Maple Grove. Almost everyone in the building gathered outside the basement. Nobody wanted to admit they were curious, but nobody left. Daniel was already there. He did not run. He did not argue. He did not ask what they were doing. He simply stood beside the wall in his old blue jacket, watching the officers move the third washing machine away. For the first time since I had met him, Daniel did not look tired. He looked calm, almost relieved. The workers started breaking through the wall. The first layer of bricks came apart quickly. Behind it was thick insulation, and that was when people started stepping back. The basement suddenly smelled wrong, not like an old building, like something trapped for too long. Moisture, rot, old chemicals, something sealed away. The workers kept going until they reached a second wall. The room became completely silent. Even the machines seemed to stop humming. When the final bricks were removed, they found a narrow, hollow space behind the concrete, and inside that space was Sarah Miller. She was curled up with her knees against her chest, as if she had been trying to make herself smaller. One arm was raised. Her fingers were pressed against the inside of the brick wall. Forensics later found deep scratches across the inner surface. Sarah had not died immediately. She had been alive when Daniel sealed her inside. That was the part nobody in the building could accept, because everyone thought they knew Daniel. He was the man who fixed broken doors, carried groceries upstairs, helped strangers, and smiled politely in the hall. He was also the man who had sat outside a wall every night for 12 years. When police searched Daniel's apartment, they found dozens of notebooks. The first entry was written the day after Sarah disappeared. Day 1, she screamed for hours, knocked more than 300 times. Day 2, around 180 knocks. Day 3, less than 100. Then the numbers became smaller, until one entry stopped me. Day 7, no knocking. That should have been the end. Sarah was gone. The wall was silent, but the next page had another entry. Day 8, 1:13 a.m., 3 knocks. After that, Daniel continued writing, every night, for 12 years. He went downstairs, sat in the same chair, and listened. At the trial, everyone wanted one answer. Why Daniel sat quietly for a long time before speaking. He never said he hated Sarah. He never said he wanted to hurt her. That made it worse. According to Daniel, Sarah had been kind to him. She thanked him when he repaired things. She remembered his name. When Daniel's mother died, Sarah left a sympathy card outside his maintenance room. To Sarah, those were small gestures. To Daniel, they were proof. Proof that she understood him. Proof that she was different. Proof that she needed him. When Sarah told him she was moving away, Daniel could not accept it. He convinced himself she was making a mistake. He convinced himself the city would hurt her. He convinced himself that one day she would realize he had been protecting her. So he waited for her in the laundry room. They argued. Sarah threatened to call the police. Daniel panicked. After she fell, he made the decision that destroyed both of their lives. He built the wall. At first, he told himself it was temporary, only until she calmed down, only until she understood. But the wall stayed, and Sarah stayed behind it. During the trial, the prosecutor asked why Daniel kept returning to the basement after Sarah died. Daniel looked confused, not angry or ashamed, confused. She didn't die, he said. The evidence was clear. Sarah had died shortly after being trapped, but Daniel refused to accept it. He said she knocked every night, sometimes 3 times, sometimes 5. To him, that meant she was still there. When the prosecutor asked why the knocking mattered, Daniel smiled for the first time. Because it meant she remembered me. Daniel was sentenced to life in prison. The basement laundry room was closed for several months. The 3rd washing machine was removed. The old wall was torn down and replaced with clean white tile. After that, everything looked normal. Almost too normal. I wanted to move out immediately, but breaking my lease would have cost more than I had, so I stayed for another 6 months. During those 6 months, nothing happened. No knocking, no strange sounds. No one talked about the wall anymore. I almost convinced myself it was over. Then came my last night at Maple Grove. I went downstairs to wash one final load before moving out. The new machines were quiet. The basement was bright. The walls were clean. For the first time since I moved in, the laundry room looked ordinary. Then the lights flickered. Once, twice. The washing machine closest to the wall stopped. The room became silent, and then I heard it. A knock from the wall, thump. I froze. A second knock followed. Thump. My first thought was Daniel's warning. Don't answer it. I grabbed my laundry basket and walked toward the exit. Then the 3rd knock came. But this time, it did not come from the wall behind the washing machines. It came from behind me, thump. I turned around. Nothing. Then another knock came from above me. Thump. Then another from below me. Thump. The entire room was answering, not loudly, not violently, slowly, patiently. Like something on the other side was learning where the walls were. I dropped my basket and ran. I did not stop until I was back inside my apartment. That night, I packed everything I owned and left before sunrise. A few weeks later, I visited Mrs. Harris at a nursing home outside the city. There was one thing I still needed to ask her. Why had she warned me? When I asked, she stayed quiet for a long time. Then she told me Daniel had not really been listening for the knocking. He had been listening for the moment it stopped. I still do not know what happened in that basement. I do not know if Sarah was really knocking. I do not know if guilt can make sounds. I do not know if some places remember what happens inside them. But I know one thing. Daniel was not sitting in front of that wall because he was sorry. He was not protecting Sarah. He was not waiting for forgiveness. He was waiting for the day she remembered enough to speak, enough to say his name. And when the police opened that wall after 12 years, Daniel smiled because he knew something none of us understood. The wall was gone, but whatever had been behind it was finally free. 3 months after I left Maple Grove, I received a letter. No sender, no return address. Inside was a single piece of paper. It had only one sentence. Thank you for listening.